Good day to all. Today there will be a story about the most dangerous robber in America, Jake Harris. Jake Harris was born and raised in a poor area of a small town in the southern United States. His childhood was difficult. His parents could not provide him with a decent future. Because of this, he was forced to look for a way out of the current situation on his own. Already in his teens, Jake began to engage in theft trade to earn money. Teenage hopelessness grew into ambition and greed for power. Jake quickly took control of the local gang and began to develop his criminal business. With each successful operation, his ambitions grew and he began to become one of the most powerful kingdoms in the relationship. Despite his successes, Jake's path was fraught with danger. Competitors tried to thwart his plans and the police relentlessly pursued him. But Jake was smart and cunning, and every time he had to follow the rules. His gangster business became larger and more successful, but at the same time the price of his success grew. One day, Jake was betrayed by his own people. He was forced to flee to escape the police and many former accomplices. While he was in hiding, he began to reflect on his life and what he had left behind. His heart awoke for his children and family, whom he had hardly seen for many years. But after overcoming many trials and dangers, Jake realized that simply leaving his criminal past behind is not so easy. Deciding that he no longer has a place in the old city, Jake Harris leaves his hometown and goes to Chicago, a metropolis where laws practically do not work. In this ruthless city, where crime reigns in every lamp, Jake sees new opportunities. Arriving in Chicago, Jake starts from scratch. He knows that he will have to fight through competition and establish his influence in this city. He becomes famous in underground circles for his experience and toughness. His reputation as a dangerous and unpredictable man quickly lingers. However, in this city, Jake faces new challenges. Chicago has its own rules of the game, and you can't always act on your own. He understands that to survive here he needs to master not only strength, but also tactics. In his quest to rise to the top of the criminal world, Jake comes into conflict with gangs and even the police themselves. But everyone must master the battle, only to temper his revolution and be able to survive. In addition to the struggle for power and influence, Jake dreams of a more worthy life in his soul. Meeting some new people makes him think that perhaps there are other ways to achieve success without resorting to crime. Thus, in Chicago, Jake Harris continued his journey, fighting external threats and demons, striving to find his place in this ruthless world. Realizing that he needs to open a restaurant in Chicago, Jake decides to return to his place and starts with petty pickpockets. He assembles a team of experienced plans and reliable people to help him implement it. The first few operations go smoothly. Jake and his team rob wealthy clients on the streets of Chicago while avoiding the attention of the police. He discovers that this city has many natural features and, if you act carefully, you can make a lot of money. But with each new robbery, the risk increases. The police begin to pay attention to unusual crimes in the city, and Jake has to take precautions. He calculates every step and understands that one mistake can cost him everything. In addition to the police, Jake also faces competitors in global crime. Other gangs do not intend to just give up their territories and resources and begin a real struggle for power in the city. However, despite all the obstacles, Jake and his team continue to move forward, aiming for bigger and more ambitious opponents. And every successful robbery brings them closer to the top of the criminal underworld in Chicago. But with growing ambitions and growing success, Jake has to make a choice: continue on the path of the queen or change his destiny. As Jake and his gang continue to achieve success, their reputation grows. They become known in Chicago's underground circles as a group that can take any side, no matter how it appears. But with each new robbery, the risk also increases. The police are leading the charge against organized crime, and Jake must face increasingly sophisticated tactics. He is forced to constantly change tactics and strategies to avoid arrest. Meanwhile, worries begin to arise within the gang. Some members of the group begin to doubt Jake's leadership and ability to make good decisions. This creates discord and even team equipment. However, Jake does not give up in the face of obstacles. He decided to strengthen his position by proving that he is an unsurpassed leader and organizer. He is developing new plans that will increase profits and avoid risks. But as the game becomes more dangerous, Jake begins to think about his future. He understands that the road he is on may lead him to the end, and he will have to make a decision: stay in the criminal world and continue supporting the authorities, or change his life for something more fundamental. As Jake and his gang's reputation builds, more and more people join their gang. Some of the new recruits are experienced robbers with their own skills and contacts that enhance their ability to achieve successful results. With the gang identified, Jake realizes he needs to become an even more organized and strategic leader. He hires specialists to plan and coordinate operations to ensure smoother and safer execution of tasks. Thanks to the new team leaders, the group gradually progresses in its activities and begins to initiate more adventurous and profitable crimes. They rob banks, organize robberies of jewelry stores, and even break into the safes of large corporations. But as gang activity increases, so does the risk. The police take appropriate measures, and the city authorities begin to put increasing pressure on the palaces. There is also a way out within the gang, and Jake must fight intrigue and betrayal within his ranks. Despite all the difficulties, Jake and his gang continue to move forward, striving for greater wealth and power. They understand that the price of success can be high, but they are willing to pay any price for their dreams of wealth and power in the world of Chicago crime. Meanwhile, Jake Harris becomes one of the most famous and influential robbers in Chicago. His gang is famous for its daring and successful robberies, and Jake himself has a reputation as an unsurpassed strategist and cunning who is always one step ahead of his predecessors. However, with the growth of power and life, Jake begins to realize that his thirst for power is still not quenched. He dreams of more, of something that will allow him to achieve his current supremacy in Chicago's global crime scene. Determined to take on a new challenge, Jake begins to build his plans on a level where even the most daring robbers would not dare to go. He begins preparing to take over one of the city's largest banks, an operation that could bring him enormous wealth and powerful influence. In this dangerous game on high grounds, Jake will have to risk everything he has, including his freedom and life. However, his ambition knows no bounds, and he is willing to do anything to achieve his goal. This is the final act in the story of Jakey Harris, where every step can be decisive. Every decision begins at a price that leads to victims for his dream of power and wealth in the world of Chicago crime. Realizing that his ambitions go beyond Chicago, Jake Harris decides to move to Washington. The U.S. Capitol opens up new opportunities and new challenges for him. He wants to become the best of the best, set new standards in the world of robbers, and reach the top of the criminal world. In Washington, Jake starts with a clean slate. He founds a new gang, gathering the most experienced and reliable robbers, ready to win in fire and water. They begin preparations to perfect the most ambitious heist in history, the White House heist. However, Jake realizes that this is not only a robbery. This is a challenge to the president, the law, and the entire society. He wants to find his superior tactics, his unmatched cunning, and his ability to overcome any obstacle. Preparing for the White House heist requires Jake and his team to be as sophisticated and resourceful as possible. They study every corner of the building, every security system, to find the best path to their goal. But as they prepare to commit the crime, Jake begins to realize that there is much more behind the robbery than just a lust for power and wealth. It is a challenge to his own nature, his ambitions, and his dreams of greatness. Thus begins the final chapter of Jake Harris's story as he faces the biggest challenge of his life and is willing to go to any lengths to achieve his dream of supremacy in and about global crime. As Jake and his gang continue to prepare to rob the White House, tensions rise around them. The police and federal security services are beginning to take active measures to prevent such a large-scale crime. But Jake is confident in his way of life and that his team is up to the challenge. Realizing that time is on his side, Jake decides to take action. Day X comes when everything is prepared to fulfill an ambitious plan. The schemes developed by Jake begin to work, and the gang is in the White House building. But not everything goes according to plan. The situation gets out of control when the police react faster than expected. The gang finds themselves caught up in pure ambition, and Jake realizes this is his last chance. During a violent incident with the police, Jake realizes that he cannot afford to go to jail. He decides to change his turn and use all his skills and cunning to get out of this situation. In the end, thanks to his intelligence and skill, Jake and his gang managed to escape from the White House building. But the plan failed, and they ran away from the police. Left completely alone, Jake Harris realizes that his actions have attracted too much attention from the police and special forces. He has to act carefully, since every step he takes can be left aside. A daring plan is brewing in his mind. Jake decides to rob the most incredible and seemingly impregnable place, the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank in Washington. He understands that this is the most risky undertaking in his life, but it is precisely such situations that allow him to feel the adrenaline and disrupt his true essence. The special forces begin to actively search for Jake, but he skillfully hides, hiding in the shadows and dressing up under different identities. All his efforts were aimed at preparing for this audacity operation. And now, Day X comes. Jake, acting independently and using the most sophisticated methods, breaks into the Federal Reserve Bank. He overcomes security systems, overcomes all obstacles in his path. A bank robbery becomes an epic event that is destined to go down in history. Jake ensured that a huge amount of money was stolen and disappeared, leaving behind only a mystery that could not be solved. Having managed to rob $400 million from the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, Jake Harris dealt a serious blow to the country's economy. The amount stolen was so strong that it caused a wave of panic in the financial markets, leading to major consequences for the economy. SWAT and police began a massive search of Jake, turning their attention to one of the most dangerous and wanted hideouts in history. But Jake was smart and cunning. He hides deep underground, closely monitoring all the actions of the relevant authorities. As the country tries to recover from the turmoil caused by his daring heist, Jake continues to make plans for a casual life. He realizes that his reputation as one of Britain's most successful men requires too much attention, and he will be forced to be more careful. After profiting from ownership of the Federal Reserve Bank and evading the police, Jake decided to use the stolen money for a new start. He admits that he needs a reliable team to achieve even greater success and stay under the radar of the authorities. Knowing how to use anyone, Jake began recruiting his new team. He did this carefully, choosing only the most experienced and reliable shelters who could help him in his new plans. With his financial resources and superior persuasive abilities, Jake assembled a team around him that was not only ready to take on any challenge, but also dedicated to the ideals of leadership. They immediately began to develop ambitious new plans, and Jake, being a master of strategy and tactics, poured all his knowledge and effort into ensuring the success of his new team. The most wanted team of criminals in all of America, led by Jake Harris, has become a real nightmare for outsiders. Their daring crimes and skillful evasiveness leave them under investigation and continue their criminal activities. Despite the hunt for them, Jake and his team remained in the shadows, using the most sophisticated methods of secret communication and concealment. They have become masters at bypassing the justice system and running underground fights against the police and intelligence agencies. Hiding in the most impassable corners of the country, Jake's team continued to develop new, ambitious plans. They robbed major financial institutions, organized large-scale jewelry thefts, and even interfered with political intrigue. Despite being dangerous and wanted, J. Walker Harris became a legend of global crime. Their names became the subject of debate in all corners of the country, and their committed conflicts became the subject of study and admiration. However, at the same time, with each new risk for the team, the risk increased. Law enforcement agencies were not going to give up, and every step of Jake and his team was carefully monitored and analyzed. So continues the epic saga of Jake Harris and his group, the most wanted criminal gang in America, where every day was a challenge and every legal risk. Realizing that they were under constant scrutiny from outside authorities, Jake Harris and his team began to develop a complex plan to control one of the largest banks in the country, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The first step was to study all aspects of bank security. To do this, Jake sent his most trusted associates to secretly monitor the bank building in order to mark all the weak points and convenient entry points. The team then set about developing a unique action plan. They identified several ways to penetrate the bank, as well as ways to bypass system security. Jake, as a master of strategy and tactics, offered several options to have a backup plan in case of failure. He also paid attention to the smallest details to ensure that each team member understood their role and responsibilities in completing the task. All details were thought out to the smallest detail, including timing, travel routes, how to deal with bank employees, and how to respond to possible unforeseen circumstances. Each team member knew that the success of the operation depended on their cooperation and discipline. They were willing to risk everything to achieve their goal and prove that they are unsurpassed in their field. The plan was thought out down to the last detail. Every step was well thought out and the team was ready to go. On the day of approval, Jake and his team acted quickly and flawlessly. They used all the advanced technologies and skills to bypass the bank's security and protection systems. The first step was implementation within the bank. They used special documents and cunning disguise methods to get inside the building undetected. Once they were inside, the team quickly moved on to their tasks. One team member hacked into the security system, disabling the surveillance camera and signaling while others set up explosives to bypass the safes and vaults. Jake, being a master planner, coordinated all the actions of the team from the shadows, ensuring the perfect execution of the plan. Each team member performed their role with such professionalism and skill that the bank employees were absolutely powerless in front of them. Soon they reached the most precious bank, millions of dollars in cash and securities. With the confidence and composure that only an experienced lock can have, Jake Harris's team stole a huge fortune right under the noses of bank guards. They left the bank as quickly and quietly as the deputies and disappeared into the crowd of the city, leaving behind them only minor effects of shock and turmoil. Realizing that their security systems had failed them and that they could be found at any moment, Jake Harris and his team realized that they were in danger. They realized that the relevant authorities would persistently search for them, and the decision was made quickly. They needed to escape before it was too late. Jake, being an experienced leader, realized that their pursuers would act quickly and deliberately. He decided that the best conditions would be to go to Europe, where they could temporarily close and review their plans for the future. Using their financial resources, Jake and his team organized a quick overseas move. They communicated through encrypted messages and kept a low profile, avoiding drawing attention to their activities. Upon arrival in Europe, Jake began to develop new plans. He believes their escape was only temporary, and they needed to act quickly and considerately to ensure their safety and future. Under the new leadership, Jay and his team continued to act as a shadow, but they also understood that their consequences were adapting to new conditions and new challenges. They were ready to do anything to protect themselves and their interests, even if it was a clear threat to abandon their homeland and start all over again. Arriving in Europe, Jake decided it was time to leave his past behind him and start over with a clean slate. He realized that escaping America gave him a chance to start a new life, free from crime and danger. Jake respectfully turned his back on the criminal world and devoted himself to the search for peace and harmony. He found a new place of residence in a secluded village on the seashore, where he could enjoy the life of nature and tranquility away from bustle and stress. Here, surrounded by beauty and peace, Jake found inner peace and learned to appreciate the simple pleasures of life. He began to engage in creativity, write books and draw, express his thoughts and feelings through art. In his new life, Jake found love and started a serious relationship. He learned to trust and be loved by allowing his heart and soul to be with the person. He realized that real happiness lies not in wealth and power, but in the simple joys of life, in love and mutual understanding. Thus, Jake Harris, who left the asylum, found his true purpose in life and found happiness in his new life, free from crime and danger. Let's imagine that as a thief, Jake Harris stole an unimaginable amount of $2 billion from America, becoming the most dangerous U.S. hideout in history. Given his genius and financial situation, Jake used the most sophisticated methods and strategies to achieve his goals. He didn't just rob banks, he organized large-scale operations that were impossible for the relevant authorities.